Namaskar, I am Dipak Sarnobat, Assistant Professor in English. In today's lecture, we are going to understand the life and works of Aristotle. Who was Aristotle and which works he has given to English literature. So, let us start. We have to focus on a few important incidents in Aristotle's life. Who was Aristotle? When he was born? Where he was born? Who was his father? So, let us understand. Aristotle was born in 384 before Christ and died in 322 before Christ. He was an ancient Greek philosopher, logician, moralist and political thinker. So, he was a versatile personality. He was philosopher, logician, moralist and also political thinker. He was born at Stagira in Macedonia. His father Nicomachus was a physician to King Amyntas II of Macedonia. His lifespan is generally divided in three parts. Which are these three parts? So, firstly, he was a student of Plato. We have to understand this relation. Aristotle was a student of Plato, the eminent Greek philosopher in Athens. He stayed there for a couple of years, means Aristotle stayed in Athens for 2 years and became the head of the academy after Plato's death in 348 before Christ. Plato died in 348 before Christ and after that he became the head of the academy. In the second stage, he had been at Assos as the tutor to Alexander. Alexander means Alexander the Great, the son of King Philip II. Alexander the Great was the son of King Philip II and Aristotle was his tutor, his guide, his teacher. Plato was Aristotle's teacher, tutor, guide, but Aristotle was tutor of, guide of Alexander the Great. And finally, Aristotle was back again in Athens till his death at the age of 62. So, these are three stages of Aristotle's life. In first stage, he was a student of Plato. In the second stage, he was tutor to Alexander the Great. And finally, in the last stage, he returned at Athens and he remained there till his death, and he died at 62 when he was 62 years old. We have to consider next few points from his life or regarding his works. It has been said that Aristotle wrote about 400 books. It is said that he wrote 400 books covering almost every aspect of human knowledge and activity. It means that Aristotle focused on every aspect of human life, every experience of human life. He tried to focus on human knowledge and activity we experience as human being. They include areas like God, government, morality, religion, public welfare, education, democracy, virtue, etc. In short, he focused on every aspect that we think important as a human being. He focused on God, government, morality, religion, public welfare, education, democracy, virtue. At that time, before 3.5 century before Christ, scholars have divided his works under three groups. Scholars, literary critics have divided his works under three groups. First group, the dialogues. Second, literary essays. And third, the treatises. Now we are going to focus on Aristotle's Poetics. What was Poetics and what is his or its contribution in English literature? Poetics, or the art of poetry, is the most important literary work of Aristotle. When we think of Aristotle, we can't underestimate or we can't avoid, we can't neglect Poetics, because Poetics has an important role in English literary criticism. It was written in 335 before Christ. It is a short treatise of 26 chapters and 45 pages. In Poetics, there are 26 chapters and the book consists of only 45 pages, but it has literary value. It is not in the form of a coherent book for study. These 26 chapters or 45 pages are not in the form of a book. It is disjointed and is in the form of class notes. These 26 chapters or 45 pages are in the form of class notes. These are not in the form of a coherent book. We have to understand this, but still these pages, still these chapters have important role to play when we consider literary criticism or the history of literary criticism. Though short and incomplete, Poetics is a short treatise. It is not complete. It has immense literary value because it is the first literary work that studies many literary aspects systematically and scientifically. Poetics is short literary work. It is incomplete. Though it is short and incomplete, it has its own value because it studies many literary aspects systematically and scientifically. It proved to be an epoch-making work. Poetics proved to be an important work and an important landmark in the history of literary criticism all over the world. When we think the history of English literary criticism, we have to consider Aristotle's Poetics. Without Aristotle's Poetics or without referring Aristotle's Poetics, we can't complete the history of English literary criticism. So, we have to understand, we have to consider the general plan of Poetics. Now, we know that there are 26 chapters and 45 pages, but what was the plan of Poetics? how the chapters in the Poetics are divided. So, number first, there are 5 subdivisions we can consider. First, chapter 1st to 5th discuss poetry, its classification and the concept of imitation. Poetry, definition of poetry, types of poetry means classification of poetry and the concept of imitation. These topics are discussed in or from chapter 1st to 5th. Chapter 6 to 19. In these chapters there are few subtopics which Aristotle discuss. In them, the definition of tragedy and the formative elements of tragedy. What is tragedy and what are the formative elements of tragedy are discussed from chapter 6 to chapter 19. Chapters 20 to 22nd, 20, 21 and 22nd. In these 3 chapters, Aristotle discuss poetic diction and style. Chapter 23rd is related to narrative poetry and tragedy. Chapter 23rd focuses on narrative poetry and tragedy. And last subdivision, chapter 24 to chapter 26. These 3 chapters discuss epic, means what is epic, tragedy, what is tragedy, and catharsis. Epic, tragedy, catharsis, these topics are discussed in these 3 chapters. So, this is the general plan of poetics. In this way, if you want to understand Aristotle, you have to understand some background information about him, his life, his works, and after understanding his life and works, you can fully understand Aristotle. Thank you very much.